for us all. So thank you all for joining us today for a demo and information session on the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub. We're excited to have you in the space. My name's Cameron Law, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Carlsen Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship here at Sacramento State. I'm joined by two of our team members. We have Arlene Miranda, who can give the Zoom wave there. She heads up our operations and leads our marketing efforts. And then we also have Jesse Becker-Alexander, who's one of our entrepreneurs and residents and helps us lead a number of programs. And we are a founder or co-founder of this group called the Sacramento Entrepreneurial Growth Alliance, which I'll share a little bit more about. And so my agenda for this session is to introduce the Sacramento Entrepreneurial Growth Alliance, and really because that's been a catalyst for this tool called the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub. We will then hop into what is this tool and how can you use it as an entrepreneur, as a resource provider in your ecosystem. And then we're going to kind of take three different personas and actually go and play with the platform. And so we'll take that of the persona of the high growth startup, a Main Street business, and then a resource provider, and then happy to take any kind of questions. But that will be our lay of the land here today. And we are sharing this recording, so feel free to use that going forward. So just wanted to share briefly a little bit about the Sacramento Entrepreneurial Growth Alliance. We've taken on kind of the SAGA name there just because it's a little bit shorter, but basically there's been three founding partners that came together to really invest in this work to grow entrepreneurship as economic development, and that being the Carlsen Center, Growth Factory, and Startup Sac. I think we have Laura Good from Startup Sac here, and then maybe Monique joined us from the Growth Factory, but really we're on this mission to build a vibrant and inclusive entrepreneurial community here in the greater Sacramento region, and really trying to drive this through connecting a variety of entities, that being our cities and municipalities, other entrepreneurial support organizations, and then bringing in entrepreneurs to lead that charge. We have four areas of focus, that being education, and that education is around entrepreneurship and its role to ultimately drive our economy forward. Entrepreneurs and startups are proven to create the most jobs for our communities, and so really spreading that awareness. One of our goals is also to focus on building the network and infrastructure around supporting entrepreneurs and really building that density to support them in getting from point A to B as quick as possible. We play some role in advocacy in terms of sharing that information and really elevating the role entrepreneurship plays in driving our community forward. And then lastly is this element of data-informed storytelling and talking about how our ecosystem continues to grow. So that's a little bit about the kind of foundation of where this tool came from and kind of the group that's come together. We have currently, I believe, 17 or so members that are leading that effort going forward. And so one of the things that this group did was we launched back in, I think, 2021, this E3 scorecard, and it was basically a survey that looked at our ecosystem from four different components, being people, programs, networks, and narratives. And so our ecosystem after this kind of self-analysis identified that networks and narratives were core elements that we needed to focus on. And so through some of our conversations and being presented with an opportunity, we identified the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub as a way to better connect resources, and that being capital and funding, but also to educational programs and the things that we're doing pretty strong in our community. And then also grabbing those stories about what is going on and how these connections are leading to entrepreneurial success, which is really that identity and storytelling element that comes from the metrics. So that spurred the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub, but wanted to give recognition to this startup circuit diagram that Startup Sac created. I think they did 6 or 7 iterations of this diagram, and it was really showing this connectivity of our entrepreneurial ecosystem and what a journey of an entrepreneur might look like. And so one of the things as we looked at how do we better tell our story and connect startup founders to the resources they need is how can we turn this into a dynamic space? And looks like Laura said they'll be updating it going here in the middle of this year. So we look forward to seeing that next iteration of this, but a really great resource. And so we wanted to really bring this to life and have it be a searchable tool for you as an entrepreneur. And that's really kind of the precipice of where that NorCal Entrepreneur Hub tool came from. And so leading into the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub, it's a digital platform that you're able to, as an innovator, founder, entrepreneur, resource provider, be able to search different events, resources, and organizations that are curated to you and the business that you're ultimately looking to start. And so the partners that have come together to resource this tool are the Carlsen Center, Sierra College, and the Tahoe Prosperity Center to ultimately fund this digital platform for our regional ecosystem. And you can scan that QR code and hop in, but we're ultimately going to be diving in through some different personas. And so one of the things as we kind of go through this, there's kind of a bulk of areas. There's resources, which are the tangible things that you would be hopping into to get your startup off the ground and running. There's organizations that are connected to those different resources. And then there's ways to search different events and create lists to be able to search. And we're going to play around with that in a little bit. And so basically, kind of a quick high level before we dive into some actual personas. As an entrepreneur, you'd hop in, you'd create a profile. Ultimately, as you're creating your profile, you'd select an organization called a venture, which would identify you as a startup or small business that is ultimately utilizing resources in our ecosystem. You might be a resource provider yourself, but that would be the persona that you would take on in terms of as you're creating that organization. And then your job would be to explore the resources using keywords and a variety of elements that I'll show in a little bit. You can also at a high level be posting jobs. So say you raise a round of capital or you take on some financing and you're building positions, you can post jobs to connect with talent in our region and then also engage in events. And so those are some of the high level things that you can do, and we'll kind of go into a use case here in a moment or two. And then the other persona that we're aiming to serve is that of the resource or service provider. So those that are serving entrepreneurs and helping them along that journey. Your kind of highest level journey through this would be to create a profile. Many of the organizations and resources already exist in the platform. So at this point, I believe we have 160 organizations represented on the digital platform with close to 500 resources available. And so you could go in and claim those organizations and resources. If you're not represented on the tool, you can add that and get to work from there. And then ultimately you can edit things if the data that ultimately has been pulled for that isn't correct. So you have that ability to do so going forward. And then ultimately sharing that resource with the entrepreneurs you serve so they can access a variety of resources and tools in your ecosystem. And so kind of the next stage, if there's not any, I'll take any high level questions, but my goal going forward, thank you, Leslie. I will maybe I'll have Arlene, if you can share the link to the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub, that would be great. Sometimes those QR code things go out of date. So thanks for checking me on that. But we're going to take on 3 personas. So the first one is that of a high growth startup. Say you're building like an app-based business that you're looking to scale. The second is a main street type of business that is aiming to get into the restaurant or food and beverage industry. And then the last one is that of a resource provider and how you would go in and ultimately add your elements there. So I'm going to stop my share as I pull up the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub. But are there any questions at a high level of kind of how the story of this came to be and what the tool's kind of mission is? Going once, going twice. All right, sold. No, there are no questions at this given point. I know Laura Good might have a few questions here, so I always appreciate that. So I'm going to share this. I am noting that I am logged in as me, but basically as we get going, the first persona we're going to take on is that of the high growth startup. So say you're you and your co-founder are looking to start your business, and you come across this NorCal Entrepreneur Hub and you want to get started, and you feel a great way to get started in building your business is maybe I should attend some events. So basically you would come into the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub. This is the welcome. If you wanted to explore resources, you would click here on that main screen, but you want to explore the resources further. And so you go to events. And basically in events, it would be as resource providers, we would be plugging these in so you can see a variety of different tools that you could plug into in our ecosystem. So it's ultimately our goal to continue to have these updated, but you can see a variety of tools and resources. You're attracted by this unique name, 1 Million Cups Sacramento. You're curious to learn more about what that is. Ultimately, you would be able to explore that, click on it, and plug in. And so what this would do is ultimately be able to show what this tool and resources is. It identifies a variety of different tags that might be associated with you. So it's free, it's a virtual tool, it's a network meetup, small event, those types of things. Those are ultimately searchable as well if you're in that event directory. And so you can ultimately visit the website if you wanted to, and it would take you to where you sign up. And so say you end up attending next week on January 18th, you attend 1 Million Cups, which is a great resource. Highly recommend checking it out for any entrepreneur. But you attend and you hear about this tool or this organization called Startup Sac that serves startup founders. And you also saw another one of the organizers was the Growth Factory. And so you want to learn more about what those organizations do and how they can support you in your high growth startup. And so you can go to organizations. And so you're ultimately coming in here. It has a search function. So it's all alphabetical order, both on the organizations and resources. So that's why this list is that way. It is alphabetical order. You can then search. You heard about this Startup Sac and Laura Good. So you come in here, type in Startup Sac. And boom, I want to learn more about what Laura does and how they ultimately serve entrepreneurs and founders. And so you hop in and you want to know more about the resources provided. You could certainly go to the website, but within the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub tool, you can see the relationships. And this shows all the different resources that are provided by this organization. Certainly more can be added as organizations grow and ultimately serve more things. So say you're interested in learning more about this Kaufman Fast Track, if that's a right resource. Maybe you're not totally sure at this point, but you hop in here and it takes you to the Kaufman Fast Track. And so you want to ultimately, engage in this. And so you want to add it to ultimately a list, right? So maybe you're trying to build the different resources that you want to learn more about. So you can add to your list. So it's been added to my saved items. So now I'm building a list of things that I can go back to and ultimately explore. And so I'm going to hop back into organizations because I want to learn more about maybe if there's an accelerator that might be able to help me in my business. So I hop into here, go back to the search, and I want to type in keywords accelerators. And so Fourth Wave's one of the accelerators that come up. The Growth Factory usually does pop up here, but let's go back a second here. So if you're a female founded organization, they would be a great one to check out here. So I'm going to clear all, go back to organizations, and all right, so we're going here. We want to type in accelerators. Why didn't that? I apologize. That did not do that.
Yes.
Accelerator.
Singular.
I don't think that's possible. Well, when I did it earlier, that was not how it happened. So I do apologize, but that's all right. So say I'm going back, maybe sorry, it was under resources. So because they've identified the organization as, so we go to where we check out the resources, then we type in accelerators. Now we have a variety of options here. So we can see all the different types of programs that identify their resources as an accelerator. We saw that the Growth Factory is plugged into that 1 Million Cups. So maybe I can go back that next time to learn more. And so if I wanted to, again, save this to my list, these bookmarks ultimately save that resource so I can go back and search and learn more. And so that's kind of a way that we could ultimately take that on going forward. So now you have that as a saved list of resources. So say you ultimately go back to that 1 Million Cups and want to discuss that further, those are ways that you can learn more and identify the right resource for you. So that's kind of one persona that we take on, is that high growth startup. you could kind of see how you navigate both the organizations page, and we'll work on amending that for the Growth Factory and some of these other resources. But for those, if you go into the resources tab, which we did, and then you ultimately searched accelerators, you could do funding if you were looking for resources such as funding. And then here's different vehicles for funding. So here's all the funding organizations. You have banks, venture capital firms, a variety of different resources that would help you in accessing different types of funding going forward. So that's the persona of the high growth startup that we could take on. And I'll do this one last persona, which would be that of the Main Street business and the food-based business. And so, and then I'll take on any questions, or we can play around with someone specific business if we wanted as well. And all right. So I'm going to go back to organization. So you come into the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub, you're a founder that's interested in creating a food-based business. You're at that idea, early stage venture. And so you sign up, you create your profile, all that good stuff. You then go into, I want to explore some resources that might be specific to me. So we're hopping on in. Now, again, alphabetical order here. So you could certainly, scan through if you knew the resource that you wanted to plug into, but maybe we don't know much about what's going on in the ecosystem, and we want to then type in food and beverage because that's the type of business that we want to explore. So then we ultimately, I narrowed down all those resources to the food and beverage. So you can see there's a ton. Like, we need to add an additional layer of our search. So we know one of the key elements of getting started is to get educated. So we want to narrow it down to educational programs. So now we've condensed our search into these 3 different options. We can certainly then explore from there. And so we decide, this Alchemist Kitchen Micro Enterprise Academy looks interesting to plug into. So we can dive in deeper. And so as we're diving in deeper, we want to connect to that resource, so we can either visit their website or we can identify the relationship. So we see Jacob Sachs is the manager of this page. So we could then search Jacob and reach out to him and identify the different resources. So we want to learn more about that. So we ultimately we go to visit the website and sign up for their program that you're interested in. You could then also say, hey, I want to see if there's any upcoming events that might be able to support me in getting education or training or connections in this industry. So we'll head back to the events tab. And we can then search these and type in food and beverage. So let's see if there's any events here. Boom, we have the Cottage Foods Part 1 that's coming up in 2 weeks, right? And so we've identified a specific resource for us in our food-based business, and we can then plug into that NorCal SBDC virtual program. So that's just kind of how you could utilize that if you're utilizing a Main Street type of business. There's all different types of quick filters that you could use as you explore the different tools. One of the things that if you do come in and you're a small business and you want a small business and or startup and you want to share a job that you have, that could be looking for a co-founder, it could be looking for development talent, you name it, you can come into the jobs portal and ultimately create a job in this space where you can then promote all of your job opportunities. So there's a few in here that are currently being promoted, but is a great resource for you to access different talent. If you're also someone that's in the entrepreneurial community and wants to plug into startups or better, engage in different jobs, here's a way to explore some of those resources. So I will pause there and see if there's any questions or ideas or anything there around those kind of 2 personas. Certainly happy to play around with someone if someone wanted to utilize it for their business as well.
Cameron, Leslie had a question.
Okay.
About would incubators be included in the accelerator area?
Would incubators be included in the accelerator? So I think by the resourcing of this, it would actually be considered a different resource. Accelerators are usually, shorter time spans than incubator might be. So it depends on what that would be. So you could type in, incubators, and that would be a different resource. So that would be plugged into that.
Awesome.
So, yep.
Doesn't it depend on how people tag their stuff? Like
Yeah. So go ahead, Laura.
I was going to say, if they tagged it as both an incubator and an accelerator, it would show up in either search. Is that right?
That is correct. Yep. So, and I mean, just in the industry at large, incubators, accelerators, I feel like a lot of times they either, get misspoken of what each one of those is. So part of that is, this is to get you to, getting started on that search and to narrowing that down to the resources or organizations you want to plug into. Certainly then, it makes it easier for you to then go connect and say, oh, I see that you run an incubator/accelerator program. You can learn more about what they can actually do for you as a founder, but it narrows and creates more efficiency in getting started. So I saw, Jermaine, you had a question or comment.
I do. I think Franklin's hand was up before
Okay.
mine. So.
Okay, got it. Go ahead, Franklin.
I was just wondering, I know the hub is new. Does it have any quirks about what platform people use to access it, like Safari versus Chrome versus Edge? Is it work pretty well on all?
Good question. I don't use Safari, so I don't 100% know there. I've used Chrome and Brave. Those haven't been an issue. But one of the things is you can send feedback in the portal. So if you are having errors, playing around with it, it is definitely a new tool. So we are open to receiving feedback and gaining your thoughts. By no means is it a perfect solution as of yet, but we want it, our intention is to continue to grow with it. So we're open to receiving that feedback for one, and then certainly want to know sooner rather than later if it's not working on a particular browser. But all the ones I've tried, I haven't had any issues, and you can use it on mobile as well.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jermaine.
Hey, so hello, everyone. My name is Jermaine Carter Gibson. I'm with the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. I do small business local engagement for our office. My question was, can you share with us how the data in each of these sections is being sourced? I think the tool looks amazing, but like for resources, for example, how does that data being pulled and sourced for the tool?
Yep, great. So we, in getting this tool built and how we maintain it, is we have a partner called Ecomap. So Ecomap is the team ultimately who has built this. They have probably 20 of these different maps across the nation and or to specific ecosystems like the metaverse and things like that. So part of our contract with them is they do scrape the data to make sure that it's most up to date. And if there's, websites that no longer exist and things like that, they will amend those. Additionally, if you're not represented on the website, you could come in and add your organization and resources as an element. And so part of, and I haven't gotten to that last persona, which is that of a resource provider. You can come in as soon as you create a profile. You can claim the organization. So say you created a profile and you wanted to claim California Office of the Small Business Advocate as a user to amend that. You'd be approved to do that, and then you'd be able to edit the information in there to your liking. That would be both from an organization, but also from the associated resources. So, and I can run through a quick example. Let's use Cal OSBA. Is there a particular resource that comes to mind for Cal OSBA?
Well, I saw in the list that our Dream Fund program was listed. Which is actually sunsetting and not taking any new applicants. Okay. So I would be interested in how to get that updated.
Yeah, totally. So an example like that, you'd be able to come in and go to that resource. This is since I'm an administrator at what was it, the Dream Fund?
Correct.
So, so here's the Dream Fund. And so you would be able to come in, click on that, and then and it'd have a claim resource here. Since I'm already logged into me an administrator, it would say claim resource, and you'd be approved, and you could say this is coming in the future, or this is no longer a program that's being offered, or we could archive it so it's no longer a resource there.
Got it. So the process on that would be for us to create a profile, which we would then be able to claim the resources that are listed under our office, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, and then we can, are there any resource providers that are here that haven't engaged in this? Because we could then, one idea would be to add a resource so you kind of see how that comes across. So let's see, Leslie, your question is, how do you vet resource providers so that you do not get folks spamming, totally misrepresenting themselves, be people in other countries? Like, and so there's a verification process that you're associated with that resource. So you can't just go claim the organization and edit right away. There's an approval process for that. But our intention is to really have a representation of the NorCal region, and specifically the greater Sacramento region. But we have partners that kind of span that larger area. So
Great.
So I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to Cal OSBA since we were talking about it. So is there a resource that maybe isn't here? So funding and incentives. Are these financial incentives for startups, Jermaine?
I'm sorry, can you ask the question one more time?
Are these, in this visual, are the financial incentives for small businesses, or where would your exact small business programs be?
You can go to funding programs is one example.
Yep, perfect, very good. So say we go to funding programs and you wanted to, basically you could go, we want to go funding programs. It's not that I'm going through like saying this resource isn't represented on the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub. So we want to make sure that the Cal OSBA funding programs is associated. So we go to add resource. We know from our research, this resource isn't there. So then you'd basically copy the URL in, and it sources. It'll scrape that data, and it says name of resource, funding programs, California Office of the Small Business Advocate, has a short description. You could change the logo, all those types of things. And then on that, you could set dates and contact email if you wanted to. I'm not going to actually set this through, but then you can associate it with different organizations. So you could go California Office of the Small Business Advocate. So that's the organization that runs it. And then basically that's how you would set it up. And that would be then listed as a resource.
Got it.
So any questions from entrepreneurs and or resource providers on the utilization of the tool? Again, the main elements of it are accessing specific resources. You can then explore the organizations. One of the elements is it kind of shows people that are engaged in the kind of online platform. So that's people. So when you create a profile, you have the choice of either being a public profile or a private profile. And then the next one that we're really focusing on is getting events. So you can explore events and all of that.
Cameron, Gary had a question about whether or not on your organization profile you could embed a video. I didn't see a way to do that, but I don't
believe you can embed video on the actual website or on the actual page. You probably could add a link that would link out to a video, and so maybe you just had a description of clean start ecosystem or something, and you link out to that video, but it does not, I don't think, have the ability to have just embedded video associated with it.
And then my question is Ecomap still scraping data? Like, is stuff still popping up that didn't get added by the organizer?
So are they still adding new content? So
Yeah.
they do the initial scraping, and then they basically continue to update those that they've added in to make sure that they're up to date and that the information is connected to that. From then on, it's really kind of us as an ecosystem to make sure that the resources that weren't a part of that are added in, and that people are ultimately claiming those organizations.
So did you update Startup Sac with Kaufman? Because I hadn't done that yet.
Yeah, I added that as a resource. So
I'm like,
wanted
oh,
to
I
use
need
that
to do that. And then I saw it was there.
Yeah. So and they will be doing that on like a quarterly basis. So, but I did go ahead and add that.
Thank you.
So, but yes, that's how that would take place is you're able to add those resources and plug that in.
Cool.
I have one more question.
Yeah, please.
Once you claim your profile, at that point, so your sourcing group that brings all this data into the platform, would they still source for our office, or would the only thing that comes from our office now be from the person that claimed the profile?
So likely it'd be the people that claim the profile would be the main way that would go forward. It depends on how we want to expand our relationship with Ecomap. If we want them to continue to update all the new added people, there's a cost associated with that. But our intention is if you have a new program and you're wanting to position it in front of entrepreneurs, that as we bring in entrepreneurs to the platform, that you would want to have the most up-to-date information.
Got it. So once a profile is claimed, it's now the responsibility of the claimant to update the information that comes from them.
Yes, correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
How does it show up in search results? Like, well, for example, I just did a little test on the Startup
The
Sac
SEO.
fast track, and it didn't pop up on the first couple pages. I didn't go further than that. So, but you could have just added it. So maybe it takes some time.
In terms of the Google SEO?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We have not optimized for SEO at this point. That would be certainly, where we would like to go in the future. But at this point, we haven't like fully optimized it. It's really the biggest lift for that is to get people to claim the resources and organizations to get that up to date. And the more users we have, the more information that's ultimately coming into the platform. So, but I definitely agree that SEO will help as a resource. I see certainly for the Carlsen Center that it's a great place for someone to get started to search all that is out there and start to narrow that down. So when they say, do come meet with me or someone from our team, that they kind of say, hey, I identified these 3 resources. Let me know what you think about how to get started or who's the best people to connect in that space. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even just like if somebody typed in, Sacramento startup resources, how do we get the navigator to show up in the search results? Because it doesn't right now, at least not on the first page.
Yeah. So if anyone knows of any SEO experts, certainly would love to plug them into this for sure.
That might be a question for Ecomaps.
Yeah. I know one of the things would be is if our organizations point to that as a resource for our entrepreneurs, the more things that link to the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub, that increases the SEO as well.
Mm-hmm. All right.
All right. Any last questions, comments, concerns, ideas? So how many of you, actually, if you don't mind, I realize I didn't run my poll, but would love to see who's in the space, but also if you've already signed up for the NorCal Entrepreneur Hub. And if anyone has any questions, yeah, go ahead, Gary.
Oh, I thought you were asking a question. Have you already signed up? Oh, okay. But I do have a question. On the events, I mean, we put a lot of events up. They don't seem to show up on the Entrepreneur Hub. Is that a problem with who's scraping stuff, or do we need to put events affirmatively in some spot so that the NorCal Hub finds it?
They need to be put in there by the user. So no one's scraping that on a daily basis to put the events in there. It'd be another channel for you to promote through.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Good question. All right. So I will end the poll. So just share so you all see as well. So we have a good mix of high growth startups, main streets, resource and ecosystem builders in this space. And then little over half of us have signed up. So thanks for signing up and being early users. So we know there's certainly rooms for improvement, and we look forward to doing that and making the tool that much more useful. But yeah, any feedback you have, both positive and or areas for improvement, we would love that. And if you need support, don't hesitate to reach out to me in getting started. So I will go once, go twice. All righty. Well, I appreciate you all being here. And if you need any support going forward, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we will let you move about the cabin, as Laura Good would say, and we will see you about the ecosystem.
Thank you for the demo.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
all.
Cameron.
All righty. Cheers. Bye-bye.